Now, ideally for a not found handler, we want to not just render out text, we want to render out a view. We've already seen that the not found handler within Slim actually just renders the text out as it is. So if we just go back over to this just to demonstrate this once more, over to the not found handler, we know that when we have text HTML as our content type, so from the request we're determining the content type, we literally just output some HTML just in here. And this is using the here.doc syntax just here as well. So this is fine because this is part of the framework, but when we extend this, we want to make things a little bit cleaner. We want to clear this up. Perhaps instead of just outputting some text, we want to render out our own custom view if something isn't found. So let's take a look at a basic example of how we actually override this. Very importantly, how we set the status code, and then we'll look at bringing our views into this as well. So if we just come over to Bootstrap app, this is where we know that we can override anything on our container. And we know that within the container, we've already seen that Slim is looking for a not found handler. So very simply, we can just override this. When our app is run, we've overridden it and we can do what we want. So let's go ahead and set in here, not found handler. And we're going to set this to a closure, like we would do with any other container instance. And again, we get the current state of our container in here as well. So we can use that to render a view if we want to. So into here, because this is called, we want to go ahead and return a anonymous function just here. And into that, we know that when this handler is called, we get a request and we get a response passed through in here as well. So now what we can do is just by doing this, return anything we want here, modifying the response, and we get a new output because we've now overridden it. So in this case, what I might do is I might return a response here with a status code. Very importantly, we need to set this to 404, and then we might just write to the page and say something like not found. So this is enough to override our handler. It's not perfect, but it does work, and you can see that we get the 404 there. Now, really importantly, do not forget to include the 404 status, because otherwise you're going to see a not found, but you're going to get a status of 200, which doesn't really tell the browser or the client that's consuming your app what is going on here. Now, instead, what we should probably do is render out a view here. Now, bear in mind that this isn't going to work in the same way for a JSON response. So if, for example, you were building an API and something wasn't found, whatever you do in here will be output for that API as well. What you would want to do is when you finish this section and when we've gone through creating our class-based handler is handle this in a similar way to the original handler. If you do have a JSON request type, then you can go ahead and respond with JSON, and you already know how to respond with JSON, and all of the code is over in the handler that we've already looked at. Either way, let's go ahead, and for most web apps, we would probably just render out a view. So let's go ahead and use our container instance in here just so it's in scope of this closure. And let's just do what we would normally do. So let's return C, view, render. We already know how to render a view. We know that we need to pass in our response in here. And then we just give the path to a view that we want to output. So in this case, maybe over in resources and views, as well as our base layout that we have here from earlier, we can go ahead and very simply create maybe into here some kind of errors directory like so, and then into here go ahead and create maybe a 404.twig file. So we can extend this base template if we wanted to. You can pretty much do whatever you want in here now. So maybe we want to extend layouts app.twig, and in here we know that we have a content block that we can place anything inside. So in here we would probably just say something like not found, although of course what you would do is design this how you wanted to. So I'm just going to say not found view just so we can see the difference. And then over in app, what we can now do is say errors 404.twig, and we're pretty much done. Now there's one more thing that we've forgotten to do. Remember, that's set the status code. So if we come over now, you can see that we have our not found view. If we go ahead and just check the page source, we know that's now within our base overall layout, and that is pretty much it. But of course, just after this, what we can also then do is very importantly say with status 404, give it a refresh, and we now have the correct status code. So if you want to do very simply override your not found handler, that is how you do it. Very, very simple. But to be honest, if anything got a little bit more complex than this, or like I said, you wanted to customize what happened when maybe a JSON request to your application can't be found, maybe someone's using some kind of client to access this and get JSON, you really want to respond with JSON. You wouldn't want to output a view in some kind of JSON response. So we're going to go over and look at how we create our own class handler for this, and then you can pretty much do whatever you want, taking parts that you need from the original handler.